Hello friends, welcome to Litigation Landscape. In this video series, we shall be discussing about concepts and strategies we can use for successful litigation in GST.
Someone once asked me, what is the biggest reason an appeal is lost? I said, an appeal is lost in 90% of the cases because the first respondents did not respond appropriately. Why do I say that? Unfortunately, many of the first respondents respond to show cause notices in an inappropriate way. They have a feeling that when a notice comes, what they are supposed to do is to defend the self assessment they have taken. So, these first respondents will parade their innocence, parade their bona fides, and give loads and loads of information, reconciliation, etc., to prove that whatever they have done in their self assessment was right. But what they don't understand is that the officer is not under any mistaken notion about the self assessment done by the SSC. The officer knows everything about the self assessment done by the taxable person. He has analyzed what the taxable person has done, and he has also analyzed what alternate interpretation is possible as far as that provision is concerned, and he is canvassing an alternate view of the provision so that he can demand more taxes. So, if someone has issued a notice under a mistaken notion, it's always possible for you to give information about how we have done our self assessment. But in this case, the officer is fully aware how you have done your self assessment. So then there is no point in giving information or justification for your self assessment. In a show cause notice, what exactly is happening is that the department is canvassing an alternate tax position. So now, the moment you get a show cause notice, there are two tax positions: the tax position that you have taken in your self assessment, and the tax position that is now being canvassed by the department. So, a show cause notice can be said as a clash between two tax positions. And when there is an attack on your tax position by another tax position canvassed by the department, what you are supposed to do, or what you should do, in my humble opinion, is to attack the tax position canvassed by the officer and prove that that tax position is not a possible tax position, that tax position is not a plausible tax position, and that we neutralize the tax position canvassed by the department. Once it is shown by you that the tax position canvassed by the officer is not appropriate, you don't have to do anything as far as your tax position is concerned. Your self assessment stands because self assessment is done by you, and it is very difficult for the department to unseat that self assessment without bringing mountains of evidence. But generally, a show cause notice will have only certain allegations and not even an iota of evidence. So, it should be your effort to assail this tax position canvassed by the department, say that there is no evidence to prove the allegations. Allegations alone cannot confirm a demand. So instead of focusing on convincing the officer about the self assessment done by you, the bona fides of your transactions, the innocence of the taxpayer, it would be appropriate for the first respondents to focus on the show cause notice and try to attack the show cause notice and prove that the tax position canvassed by the department is not a possible or plausible tax position. And if you don't do this, there are many provisions in the GST law which will disallow you from pleading many things at the first appellate stage. Section 160, subsection 2 has a specific ban that if something is not questioned at the first available opportunity, you will not be allowed to plead these things at the first appellate stage. So it's natural for the first appellate authorities to ask whether you had asked this question, whether you had raised this question with the first appellate authority. If the answer is no, they will usually disregard this thing because you did not raise this issue with the first appellate with the adjudicating authority while giving a reply to the show cause notice. So this way you will lose valuable opportunities to plead certain defects in the notice, and you can in many cases get relief solely on the basis of defects in the show cause notice. Even if the demand is payable 100%, you are likely to get relief on the basis of certain technical defects in the show cause notice. So that is the difference. You need to actually focus on the show cause notice and the defects there are in the show cause notice. And in many cases, the loads of information you give will act as admissions. To take an example, there was a show cause notice saying the assessee did not pay reverse charge tax on an amount of license fee paid to the government. So in the reply, the assessee gave a reply saying that this license fee itself is a tax, and how can there be a tax on a tax? Inherent in this reply, there is an admission that RCM has not been paid. Instead, the assessee is arguing with the officer that this is a tax, so you cannot have another tax on this. So these arguments are not to be raised with the officer because interpretation of law is not the fault of the officer. So officer has got his admission that RCM has not been paid. So he will confirm the demand. He will say, I don't know about whether this is a tax, whether a tax can be imposed on another tax. I am not an expert in law. I am just a CTO. So I am not going to discuss these issues. If you have an issue, you can go to the High Court and agitate these issues. Demand confirmed. Instead, we can give another reply to this same question. We can say that all applicable taxes, whether on forward charge or reverse charge, has been paid at appropriate times during self-assessment done at the time of each tax period. In this reply, there is no information that is being supplied to the officer whether reverse charge is paid, not paid, whether tax is paid, not paid. Nothing is available to the officer to base his decision on. There is no admission from our side. And the first part will be a dispute. We dispute the proposal because all appropriate taxes. We dispute the proposal to demand RCM because it is the unequivocal position of the assessee that all applicable taxes have been paid from time to time, whether in under forward charge or reverse charge. Now you analyze this reply. There is an dispute. The objection is given that RCM payment is demanded. We object to that proposal. We are making an assertion that our self-assessment is correct and that we have paid all applicable taxes from time to time. So the assessee has disputed it. Assessee has reiterated his correctness of his self-assessment, and he has denied having short paid any taxes. Now, if the officer wants to confirm demand on this particular transaction, this on the basis of this particular reply, the officer has to be very careful. He has to overrule these objections because we have questioned the assessment. We disputed the proposal. Once the assessee disputes something, naturally more evidence and more information is required to be given by the officer to overrule this objection by passing a speaking order. So it becomes more difficult for the officer to properly address this issue, overrule this issue, and then confirm the demand. I bet 99% of the officers would just confirm the demand, saying no information is provided about payment of RCM. So this again becomes very solid ground for us because our objections have not been taken into account. A speaking order overruling these objections have not been given by the officer. So we have one better solid ground at the appellate stage. So this is the way you need to give replies to show cause notices. You need to focus on the show cause notice, focus on the defects in the show cause notice, and object to the proposals on the basis of information you have. You don't have to give loads of information to defend your self-assessment. And many tax consultants who give response as first respondents fall prey to this, and because of that, the at the appellate stage, we are not in a position to take many grounds which we could have gainfully taken. So it's very clear that the first respondents do the maximum damage to the case by giving unnecessary information to the department. You have to object to these things in the proposal and find out ways to object to it. So your replies in all cases should be, I object to the proposal because, I dispute the proposals because, we object to the proposal because. But unfortunately, in all cases, the first respondents would give informations without even disputing the allegations in the department letter. They will take up issues. Regarding this issue, I make the following submissions about the way we have done in our self-assessment. Regarding this, we make the following submissions regarding the way in which we have done our self-assessment. With respect to this ground, we submit the following arguments in support of our self-assessment. So we are giving justifications about our self-assessment. We even don't dispute something. And if you look at Evidence Act says undisputed allegations require no proof. So if you don't dispute an allegation, that allegation becomes a fact. And assessments can be done only on the basis of facts. So if you don't dispute an allegation, it becomes a fact, and facts are required to confirm a demand. So the allegation has already become a fact. The assessing officer does not require anything. But if you dispute an allegation, then the officer has to bring in a lot of evidence to prove this allegation. So you can contrast this. If you leave the allegation undisputed, nothing is required as far as the officer is concerned as per the evidence law, undisputed allegations become facts. But if you dispute an allegation, you need to bring a lot of evidence to convert this, to support this allegation, to convert this allegation into a fact, and then only the officer can confirm the demand. So, how do we object to something? All that you have to do is to say that I object to the proposal. You don't even have to give information as to why you are objecting. A simple statement saying I object to the proposal is enough. Then the department has to bring appropriate evidence to prove these allegations. But many first respondents fail to even dispute and thereby help the officer take allegations as confirmed, because undisputed allegations do not require any proof. So that's the way adjudication officers are getting information. Many information we supply to defend our self-assessment will also become admissions and further information for further assessments, etc. So that is the reason I am saying first respondents are doing the maximum damage to the case of an SSC. So if you are trying to give first response, you better know how to properly file appeals, what strategies to take in appeals, or at least you refer the person to whom you are planning to entrust the appeal if the adjudication order is adverse. And as far as GST is concerned, you can be pretty sure that the order will be adverse in 99.99% of the cases. When will the officer drop a proposal in a show cause notice? The only possible way for you to get something dropped by the adjudicating officer is when the proposal is made by this officer with an incorrect understanding of a fact. When a fact is incorrectly understood by the officer, he has no option but to drop the demand. To take an example, if the demand is for you to pay RCM on a particular transaction, assuming that RCM has not been paid, but the fact is that RCM has already been paid. So this fact is not properly understood. There is a misunderstanding of a fact. So you need to just tell the officer that, look sir, we have paid RCM on these dates. These are the challan numbers. Please drop the demand. So a fact is mistakenly understood by the officer. We have intimated this fact to the officer. Then the officer has no option but to drop the demand. In all other cases, whatever information you give, exposing your bona fides, exposing your good intentions, exposing your innocence, the officer is not going to drop the demand because he is canvassing an alternate tax position, because an alternate view is possible. Every section is capable of differing interpretations, and the officer is taking a different interpretation. So naturally, your defense of your tax position is not going to give any relief to you in adjudication. So this is the reason I am saying first respondents are the ones who do maximum damage to SSCs. So be very careful when you give your first response. You are supposed to pave the foundation for your litigation strategy at the time when you give a reply to the show cause notice. If you don't do this, you will not be allowed to take many pleadings at the appellate level and this would give maximum disservice to the client. Thank you so much.